Let me introduce myself. My name is Peter McGrath. I'm the coordinator of the Inter-Academy Partnership. I'm based in Trieste, Italy, where I'm hosted at the TWAS, the World Academy of Sciences. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I have just a few words of introduction. If I share my screen, I'll very quickly talk us through what we're hoping to achieve today. So we're here to talk about a new project from IAP, Strengthening the Climate Change Science Policy Interface. Special thanks to one of our speakers here today, Anna Pirani, who has proposed this to us and helped guide the structure of this, and also to a consultant who's working with us, Julia Gennari, who also worked on climate policy interface with TWAS before joining us at IAP. We foresee this as the first webinar of a series of 3 or maybe more to walk through the process of the development of these IPCC reports. This first one in particular is on the calls for nominations for authors. And in case you're not aware, the call for the 7th report has just been announced, and so it's very timely from that respect. A word on the IAP itself. We are a global network of science academies. We have actually 149 members, and you can see the countries colored there. We work through 4 regional networks in the Americas, IANAS, in Europe, in Africa, and ASA in the Asia-Pacific region. And we estimate that this gives us access to 30,000 leading scientists, the fellows of these academies in more than 100 countries. So among those scientists, of course, are climate change experts and those people with related expertise. So we hope to be able to build a network of those that we can work with over the course of this project. As was mentioned, we'll be talking about the process of preparing an IPCC report. Just to say, we are right here with the announcement of the call for nominations of authors, and this is the topic of our discussions today. Why are we doing this? It's really because there is a discrepancy, if you like, between the share of the global population and the author representation of previous IPCC reports, which tend to be North dominated. Although the situation is changing, is improving over the years. I don't know if you see this. So the most recent reports, there's 38% of contributors from the global south. This in some way reflects the status of the scientific enterprises in those countries. Of course, science systems are more developed in the global north, but unfortunately it does not reflect the populations as we've seen from the previous side. So our aim through this series of webinars is to work with you, the participants and our academies, to try and get lots of strong authors, candidates for acceptance into the contributing to these reports. Just one other graphic from a 2018 report. Some of you might have seen it on the limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. And you can see, for example, here the different countries and regions that have contributed. Europe is the largest, 35%, for example, even if the population is much less than parts of Asia or Africa and so on. Let me quickly introduce today's speakers. You can already see them on the screen. We're going to start with Ladislaus Changa. Welcome, Ladislaus. He's a vice chair of the IPCC, and he'll talk us through the IPCC and the process of producing these reports. Then we have two national focal points. We have Patricia Nying'o from Kenya, joining us actually from South Africa, and Anna Pirani, the focal point for Italy. And we'll conclude with some personal experiences from Adita Mukherjee. She's with the CGIAR, the Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research, and she was a contributor to the sixth IPCC report. After that, of course, we'll open the floor for your questions and answers. Please feel free at any time to put those in the Q&A box that you probably see at the bottom of your screen. I will try to monitor those even as the speakers are talking, and we'll bring the best ones, most appropriate ones forward. There is also a raise hand option. And at that point, depending on how the questions is going, we might be able to use that raise hand option, but let's see how that goes. Just one other point, we have prepared an infographic to go with this webinar, and we'll be sharing that with all the participants, just so that you can have a sort of written record of what is being presented here today. I think with that, I will stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Ladislaus, please. Hey, Ladislaus, we don't hear you. I think you're still muted.
So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, everything's good now. We can hear you too.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me start by expressing my appreciation and thanks to all of you, to Anna, Peter, and also Sophia for this preparation, and also my colleague Patricia and Aditi for your commitment and allocating time to participate into this important session. So I would just very quickly go through some very brief presentation about IPCC role and also the process and also the priority for AR7. So that will be my the outline for my talk, and also at the end give some summary and a few recommendations. So we all understand that IPCC was established to provide or to assess on a comprehensive, objective, transparent, and open basis the scientific, technical, socioeconomic information necessary for enhancing our understanding about the risk posed by human-induced climate change, and also the potential impact, but also importantly, the option for adaptation and mitigation. So our role at IPCC is to conduct assessment based on objective, transparent, comprehensive, and open basis. So this is the role that we do, and we are guided, or our work is grounded into ensuring that we are neutral with respect to policy, but we are providing the information that are relevant for informing policy, for informing action. And we know, and let me remind again, IPCC was established back in 1988 by UNEP and WMO with the same purpose, to provide the international community with the best available science about climate change and to alert us about the status, the trend, what is causing climate change, what are the potential impacts, and importantly, what are the potential adaptation option and mitigation option. And since its establishment in 1988, IPCC have already produced 6 major assessment reports. The first one being in 1990, which was very critical for informing the establishment of UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And this just to highlight the science policy interface is at the cornerstone of the work of the IPCC. So the first assessment report led to the establishment of the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the second assessment report in 1995 led to the to informing the Kyoto Protocol. And also the third assessment report in 2001 was very critical in accelerating our momentum and focus towards adaptation. And then the fourth assessment report was also critical in mobilizing effort along the threshold of 2.0 degrees Celsius, but also IPCC was awarded Nobel Peace Prize for the work and the incremental work that we are doing. And then we all remember that the fifth assessment report of the IPCC back in 2014 led to the informing the Paris Agreement. And the sixth assessment report in 2023 was very critical in informing the first ever global stocktake of the Paris Agreement. So what are we trying to draw here? That each of the last six assessment reports of the IPCC have been very critical for informing policy and informing climate action. And AR7, we can be guaranteed that AR7 will not be different. Our hope is that, and our major expectation is that is also going to be very comprehensive and very robust, and will also contribute in shaping our decision and climate action. And sorry for background noise. And just in a nutshell, we have three working groups at IPCC. Working group 1, which deal with the physical science basis, and also working group 2 deal with vulnerability, impact, and adaptation, and the working group 3 dedicated for doing assessment on matters related to mitigation option and potential, but also with the task force built on greenhouse gas inventory. Now, our work for the seventh assessment cycle started back in July 2023 in Nairobi after the election of the new bureau. And thereafter, we dedicated our work to prepare the work plan for the seventh assessment cycle. And under that plan, the plan is grounded, and the entire work is grounded into priority that include strengthening inclusivity and also policy relevance of our product, and ensuring that our product in this cycle are more climate action-oriented and are more policy relevant. And this webinar is actually part of that, in trying to contribute in promoting the participation of experts from Global South and the developing world, but of course, all those who are willing to participate from all over the world. So to give more awareness, more inspirational, to ensure that we've increased number of participation. And after the election, then we worked to prepare the work plan, and that also included the preparation for the IPCC Special Report on Climate Change and Cities. That is one of the first product that will be produced in the seventh assessment cycle, and we are currently working to very actively to prepare the special report on climate change and cities. And I would like to submit for all those who are participating in this webinar that this is another opportunity for you to tap in and contribute to the IPCC special report on climate change and cities, which will be delivered by early 2027. And then we have a methodology report on short-lived climate forces, but also methodology report on carbon dioxide removal technology, but also carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which also will be delivered by 2027. We are very grateful that in our P62 in Hangzhou, China, we managed to agree the outline for the working group, 3 working group, working group 1, working group 2, working group 3, and also the outline for the update on 1994 technical guideline on impact, adaptation, and vulnerability. And we expect in P63 we'll be able to, conclude our work on the timeline for entire AR7. And we expect to deliver the census report by late 2029. Yeah, just to wind up and summarize, in the 7th assessment cycle, as I have alluded to, we are committed for ensuring that we strengthen inclusivity and ensuring that particularly enhanced participation of young scientists and all the expert practitioners from Global South, and also ensuring that opportunities for early career scientists are also provided. So we call upon all early career scientists to take this into consideration to actively participate in the process. And also would like to submit this. We encourage universities all over the world to consider having a very active role in the IPCC process, particularly including once the report is out, to even consider preparing policy brief to try to zoom in IPCC reports and to strengthen dissemination of those kind of the IPCC reports in whatever format that you may feel appropriate and relevant. So with that, I would like once again to thank you very much, and I look forward for enhanced participation of all the colleague experts and the practitioners from Global South, and my colleague will talk more about the process and share with you how you can be able to participate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ladislaus, for that sort of overview of the IPCC and how we've got to where we are today. At this point, I think you can stop sharing your screen, and we'll hand over to Anna Pirani. Anna and Patricia will sort of co-present as national focal points from Italy and Kenya, respectively. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic opportunity to reach what an impressive network the Inter-Academy Partnership has. And it's by fortune that we're basically co-located in Trieste, so it's just an easy, low-hanging fruit to find options and ways in which we can collaborate. And so it's very important, as you were mentioning at the beginning, Peter, that we are reaching a broader audience, as Ladislaus said, the inclusivity aspects, the broadening of the participation and the strengthening of the knowledge basis that is representative and comes from all regions is really one of the critical priorities for the IPCC. So I share just an image of what the panel actually looks like. It's an intergovernmental body, and here you see a panel session where each country is represented by a focal point, a national focal point, and their team. And we discuss the procedures, the work program, and the outcomes of the assessment. And it's really an interface that is unique in the UN system, I think, in having a two-way exchange with the international scientific and technical community that is able to provide a robust and transparent assessment of the knowledge to inform governments as they work in developing climate policies. So we wanted to share the information about the role of the focal points. First of all, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Anna, and then I work with my colleague Antonio Navarra to represent the Italian expert community and build that bridge to bring them into the intergovernmental body's work and to bring back the findings into the national context. And we have various activities, particularly in outreach and explaining the IPCC process and the outcomes. And we have a website which is in Italian in some parts, but there's a lot which is translated to English. And so I also welcome you to join our newsletter. We generally run English language webinars and activities. So over to Patty.
Thank you, Anna. So I will also introduce the IPCC team for Kenya. And so my name is Patricia Nying'uro, and I work with my colleague Joyce Kimutai. And just like Anna, we also have the role of connecting the IPCC to the experts within the country. And we additionally also work to translate the work of the IPCC, make it relevant for policymakers. And what you see on your screen is just an example of one of the reports that we worked on off of the AR6 reports, and we domesticated it for the Kenyan context. I think now we'll move on to look at what exactly we expect. So Ladislav had mentioned what products we have during AR7, so I will not dwell on this, and we can go straight into the outlines of the reports. So Working Group 1, as you may all know, is based on the physical science basis of climate change. And for this particular 7th assessment cycle, we have 10 chapters in the Working Group 1 report. And these are the areas for which we are now inviting, or the IPCC has called for nomination of experts. So it goes all the way from changes in regional, large-scale changes in the climate system. We look at the regional perspective, what advances have been since AR6 in our understanding of Earth system changes. And then towards the end, in chapter 10, we look at users. How can users use this information? So climate information and services. Then on to Working Group 2. Working Group 2, again, is on impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. It is the largest working group report for this cycle. It has 20 chapters, double what we have in Working Group 1. And understandably so, because there's a lot of information to cover on adaptation. So again, we have regional chapters. So from chapter 7 to chapter 13, we look at the various regions and focus on them and their cross-cutting elements that will be discussed across all those chapters. And then after that, we look at particular sectors. So we look at water, we look at the oceans, we look at agriculture and food security. And so if you have expertise in any of these areas, then there's an invitation for you to participate. Anna, I'll let you go through Working Group 3 as you go forward.
Yes, and I just complement that in the Working Group 2 outline, there is also an important product, which is an update to guidelines that were produced by the IPCC in 1994 on assessing climate change impacts and adaptation. And many of you will be familiar with the global goal and adaptation, and this intersection with the assessment process is a real interesting, shall we say, characteristic of the 7th assessment cycle. Then we have the Working Group 3 report on the mitigation options to address climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the report outline is, again, quite long compared to Working Group 1. And here we move through understanding the emissions trajectories, how we've got here. And then we assess how the projected futures could play out, different emissions trajectories, different land use trajectories, but in the context of sustainable development. And so the framing is very much embedded in a sustainable development context. So mitigation action and sustainable development are treated side by side. And then throughout the following chapters, there are, so we say, dimensions of our actions and how they may be put into place, the enablers, the barriers, the policies, the finance. And then we move into a part of the report, which is around a more sectoral assessment of how different sectors are contributing, what are the different scales and the different cross-cutting dimensions that will be addressed through these sectoral chapters. So when you are considering to apply, it's quite a straightforward process. You access the nomination form, which you can find by contacting your national focal point or an observer organization. We can provide the direct link. I think it's hyperlinked in the presentation and also, I'm sure, in the infographic. This nomination form is straightforward. It must all be completed. So all the mandatory, where the red stars are mandatory entries, need to be included. Otherwise, it literally doesn't upload into the IPCC system. And what is critical is really to highlight your areas of expertise that you think are essential contributions towards these assessment reports. So you identify your areas of expertise, you identify the publications that show the kind of work that you've been doing that is really interesting to bring into the assessment. And the point here is really to consider chapter by chapter. You can find the outlines and you will see the indicative content bullet by bullet, and you can really see where your expertise best fits into these reports. And you're welcome to identify 1 to 5 different chapters, actually. If you're interested in more than one working group, you would complete a nomination form for each respective working group. And we'll just come to the roles in an instance, but just to say, to complete your nomination, you prepare a CV. It must be no longer than 4 pages. And here the advice that I would share is to really put up front, again, your contributions that are going to be very important in terms of a synthetic approach, or to be able to build a picture from your region, from your country, from your domain, that is important for the other knowledge that is coming around the table in these chapters to build a comprehensive assessment. You can submit your nomination through your national focal points. And here we have hyperlinked the list, so you can find for each country who that is. You can also choose to go through an observer organization. But here I think with Patricia, we really want to emphasize that we would like to strengthen the national process. And so please try to reach out to your national focal point. In our respective cases, we have internal deadlines to receive the nominations to allow for our processing. So for Kenya, it's the 14th of April, and for Italy, it's the 10th of April. And overall, the nominations must be submitted by us in time on the 17th of April. Maybe back to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Anna. I'm meant to mention also that something new that we are incorporating within the IPCC in this 7th assessment cycle is how to get indigenous knowledge in. And so when you look at the actual annotated outlines and the sections, you will be able to see areas where the authors are expected to work on incorporating indigenous knowledge. So this is an area that's relatively new, and it will be interesting to get as many experts from various contexts to help us address this. So in the nomination form, once you choose a chapter, you will be able to select what role you would like, and there are actually 3 of them. So you could choose to be a review editor, and what this means is that you would be supporting the authors in addressing comments that are sent by experts. You would help identify expert reviewers, but also advise the authors on how to handle contentious issues that come up in the form of comments from governments and from experts. You could choose to be a lead author as well. And if you're a lead author, then you're responsible for the production of a section of a report within a chapter. So within one particular chapter, you will be responsible for one section. If you choose to be a coordinating lead author, then you coordinate the work on major sections of a report. So an entire chapter would be under your work. And so authors are expected to provide substantial contributions for which they are accountable, and make sure that what they are providing is very quality and they can link back to the papers that they reference. So this can be in the form of paragraphs of text. They could provide sections, boxes, tables, or even figures. The authors are also expected to collaborate with others. So typically you would attend lead author meetings and collaborate with the rest of the authors who've been selected to be part of the writing. You would probably sit together in chapter groups and then work together towards ensuring that you achieve a consensus on the confidence in the assessment, and also respond to review comments that are received from the drafts. And so this lead author meetings, there are 4 of them for each of the reports, and the coordinating lead authors and lead authors attend 4 of them, all 4. The review editors would attend 2 of them, and then they will also attend, they will be part of the development of the summary for policymakers and attend the approval session. It's important to note also that if you're an author or an expert from a developing country, typically the IPCC would be able to support your travel through the IPCC Trust Fund should you require such support. So how does the IPCC select its authors? So the IPCC Bureau would form a scientific steering committee, for example, and then they will select authors from the pool of nominations. So in the past, we've had questions around experts who put in their nomination and have not heard back. It's important to note that this nomination is global. All focal points from across the countries will send in their nominations, and there will be quite a big number. So there is a criteria that the Bureau would use to determine who to select. And this is, for example, the expertise in either scientific, technical, or socioeconomic, based on what the outline speaks on. Geographical representation is also very important. As Peter also had mentioned at the beginning, we're working to improve representation. And then a mixture of experts, those who have previous IPCC experience, and those who are relatively new. And then gender balance as well is also key. And also users or experts with background from relevant stakeholders or user groups. And so to be able to, they will use this criteria to be able to come up with the best set of experts to do the right thing. Anna will probably talk about why the IPCC is very unique in terms of it being an interface for science and policy.
Yes, and now we hope to really encourage you and motivate you to think about joining this process, because I think it's clear also from the perspective of having participated quite closely in the process, how this is quite a standalone sort of new experience, for example, for experts that may be collaborating with others in projects or may have other collaborative activities ongoing. I think the IPCC context is an interaction scientifically and technically that is really standing out. So I encourage you to really think about this as an option for you in the future. What's really important, as Ladislas mentioned right at the beginning, is that the reports are designed to be advice of the broad options or the space in which policymakers can work with the knowledge to develop their policy choices. So it's an assessment is not one which instructs or identifies priorities or identifies or gives direct guidance. It really puts on the table the broad knowledge base and a synthesis of that from the last 7 to 5 years, shall we say, since the last reports. And the IPCC is not actually carrying out its research or producing original data sets. So it really, it builds on the wealth of information that is out in the published literature. It's increasingly able to assess grey literature, and also there's a priority now on understanding how to better integrate the indigenous knowledge sources. And the scientists and experts that come around these chapter tables, shall we say, they assess the evidence from the scientific, technical, and socioeconomic publications and the evidence basis that is out there. So it's, again, not about your own specific research and your own work, but it's from your knowledge, assessing the information that is available to help policymakers gather the best information for their work. And the IPCC process is special in that it has an iterative cycle of drafting. So there's a first draft produced by the experts, which then goes for an expert review first and foremost. So your colleagues and your peers will be part of the process as an author. And then a second draft is developed building on these first set of comments. And at that stage, it's reviewed also by government experts. So this co-design with the government experts begins. And at the end, we have a draft of the summary for policymakers that is reviewed by the government experts. So the language that is summarized to go towards the policies context needs to be clear and needs to be well communicating the findings of the scientific knowledge base. And this is where the government process really comes in. And there is a particular final stage in that co-design where around the room in an IPCC session, the text in this synthesis of the underlying reports is approved line by line with governments. So just to emphasize a little bit what an assessment is, so the IPCC is not a review process, it's an assessment of our understanding of what the knowledge is saying. So while a review, you could say, it could explain all the knowledge that we have out there, it could explain the different methodologies that are there and the different findings. The assessment goes a step beyond, and this is where your role as an author is coming into play, because you are an expert that is able to explain and communicate the level of knowledge we can take away from that evidence. So you would say, we have a confidence that the knowledge that the publications are showing, the broad breadth of underlying literature, gives us confidence in the findings that we are reporting in the assessment. So, for example, concretely, if the review were looking at modeling results in the literature, it would say what the results are, what are the lines of evidence, and say it would mainly be explanatory of the landscape of what we understand in these models in the literature. Then the assessment would take it a step further. It would probably integrate other lines of evidence and then make a statement on the robustness of the findings. And that's exactly, again, what the authors are here to do. They make an expert assessment of the available evidence. So not on whether the topic is justified or considering the process or phenomenon and how it works itself, but really communicating what the literature is saying on these topics. And then we have a very important aspect of the IPCC assessment, which is ensuring a traceable account to substantiate the conclusions of the assessment. So the chapters start very much from what we have learned so far since the last assessment report. Then we would explain why this topic matters in the context of the IPCC assessment and the questions that it's trying to inform. And we would have essentially a review, I suppose, of the current understanding based on the literature. And then finally, in these chapters, there's a step to conclude with confidence what we can say about the knowledge basis. And here is a little schematic that really shows quite how strong this process is. If we start actually from the right-hand side, almost, well, the end, the summary for policymakers, which I explained is this synthetic document that comes away from the assessment process, is building on a succession of stages that synthesize the broad knowledge, which if you look, this is the basis of the Working Group 1 report in the past assessment cycle, the AR6. It came from an assessment of 14,000 publications. And this was summarized in a very long and rich report that is actually fantastic to navigate. If you have a particular topic you're interested in, you can find it in the report and it'll explain and illustrate the knowledge on that given topic. So, for example, the role of aerosols in climate feedbacks. And so then you would have a technical summary that brings together the different lines of evidence. So from models, from observations, from process understanding. And then finally, there are a set of conclusions that are produced in the summary for policymakers. Back to you, Patty.
Thanks, Anna. So by highlighting the traceability, it helps us see why the IPCC or the products of the IPCC are very useful for the science policy interface. And some of the things that we make sure, or the IPCC makes sure are in there, for example, is the rigor. So the reports, the assessments are very robust, exhaustively balanced and transparent. We can be able to trace, there's clarity, there's traceability, it's very objective. And they provide transparent assessment of confidence and explanation of expert judgment. We try and keep the chapter length as short as possible to provide very focused information and straight to the point. And then when we have figures in there, then we know it's very clear what the intent of the figure is. So it's a very clear visual message. And then provides for co-design. There's a collaboration between the authors and the policymakers to make sure that what goes out is scientifically rigorous and very relevant for various contexts. And then with the review process, then it allows for us to get input from experts, from other experts, from people who work in specific contexts. And these are addressed as comprehensively and transparently as possible. Overall, then we have a logical flow of information that is very thoughtfully structured and is very useful for policymakers. So what if you don't get selected as an author? There are additional ways that you can participate in the IPCC, this 7th assessment cycle. You could contribute to the literature. So now that we know what the outlines look like, you could find out what areas gaps exist and how your own research can be able to contribute to that. And you would publish your papers that the authors who are selected would get and be able to assess. You could be an expert reviewer as well. So there are 2 formal review stages, and the advertisements will go out. You'll be informed about them, and you'd be able to read the reports that are currently under review and send in your comments. But you could also be a contributing author. And I think I've seen a question in chat about that. So once the writing has begun, the coordinating lead authors will reach out to find those experts who can serve as contributing authors, and they will support them to prepare additional technical information in the form of text, for example, graphics or data, and this will be integrated into the chapter. So we finish this part of ours with Anna by mentioning that this assessment process is very valuable. It carries expert information, it's policy neutral, it provides guidance, but does not tell countries what to do. It's very authoritative because it also informs international policy at all scales as well. It's a very effective basis for communication. It stimulates understanding, it spurs research, and also supports collaboration across various fields and across regions as well. And if you get selected, then it's a fantastic opportunity for you to interface with many international experts and to also be able to inform policy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Anna. Before we move to Aditi, it's quite impressive. I wrote down the word here, monumental, 2,500 pages for 14,000 references. So, and having the opportunity to contribute to this, I think is a great service for humanity, given the situation that our planet is in at the moment. So it's good to see I can see questions coming in through the Q&A, and we'll try and get back to those. Maybe there are one or two. Anna and Patricia, as you were talking, you probably didn't have a chance to review them, but some you may be able to answer in a written way, and others are coming through. We'll try and get to as many of those as possible. I did note from that presentation the imminent deadlines. 14th of April in Kenya and the 10th of April in Italy, and other countries will vary. We'll make sure we get the links to the national focal points and the observer organizations in the chat and on our website as soon as possible, so people can start checking for their own national situations. And just to highlight that, and I think this is right, you don't have to be an expert in climate change per se, but there are opportunities in water management, agriculture, biodiversity, energy, industry, health and well-being. All these different aspects are covered in different chapters. So there's many more ways to contribute, I think. Would that be right? Anna, Patricia? Yes, I can see nods. Okay. And yeah, that's hopefully I've summarized and given a sense of the urgency as well here. But let's hear from Aditi. You've been through this process, so let's hear your reflections on that and any advice that you have to give. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Ladislas and Anna and Patricia. Excellent introduction to the IPCC process. I do not have a PowerPoint, but I wanted to just share some of my experience as a contributing lead author in the AR6 cycle. I had 3 roles. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Aditi Mukherjee. I'm the director of CGIAR's Climate Impact Platform. CGIAR is the world's largest publicly funded research and innovation organization that works on all aspects of agriculture and agri-food system. And we work mostly in the global, exclusively in the global south, in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia. I am based in Nairobi, from where I'm joining all of you today. Today, I think my role in this webinar is to share some of my personal insights and experience of being an IPCC author in the AR6 cycle. I had 3 distinct roles in the last cycle. So every cycle has special reports. So this year, the AR7 has a city special report. The AR6 cycle had 3 special reports. One of them was called SROC, that was around mountains and oceans. in that high mountain chapter, my role was as a review editor. So one of the roles that Anna and Patricia explained. So the review editors are the ones who kind of overall keep an eye on the entire process to see that the authors have taken in board largely the comments that have come from the expert review and from the government review. And they participate in 2 out of the 4 meetings that happens with the among the authors team. Those are called the lead author meetings. So that was my first introduction to the IPCC as a review editor for the mountain chapter. An incredible experience. The chapters receive over thousands and thousands of comments. I mean, some chapters end up receiving 5,000, 8,000 comments in each of these, 3 or 4 occasions during which the governments and the experts can provide comments. So one of the work of the review edit, and then the author team led by the CLAs who coordinate and the lead authors, they have to respond to each of those comments. So the job of the review editor is to make sure that all of those comments are responded to in the most optimum and honest manner, so that nothing that the governments and the other experts are saying is ignored. Everything has been taken and valued, and then accordingly a decision to accept or reject comment has been made. Then my second role in the IPCC in the last cycle was as a coordinating lead author. That's also the role that Anna and Patricia mentioned. The coordinating lead authors are exactly like the lead authors. Usually chapters have around 12, at least in AR6 cycle, every chapter had 12 authors, of which 2 were coordinating lead authors and the 10 were lead authors. So in almost all ways, coordinating lead authors and the lead authors, everybody's job is to write the chapter, which is, in the case of IPCC, is through assessing the existing literature. So the job of IPCC has been made clear by all of the speakers before me, is not to produce new literature, not to produce new data, but to look out and assess what's already out there on your topic, and then to assess them to the best scientific rigor. So the CLAs, along with the lead authors, do that. I was the coordinating lead author of the water chapter of the working group 2. We were 12. 6 of us were from Global South, 6 of us were from Global North. Water being at the intersection of the biophysical world and the social world, the 6 of us were also social scientists, 6 of us were also physical/natural scientists. So it was an extremely diverse team in terms of gender. Again, 6 of us were women, 6 of us were males. So it was like diverse in terms of gender, diverse in terms of global North versus global South, and also diverse in terms of our disciplines. Many of us were social scientists, many of us were natural scientists. And all of our job was to assess all the literature that is there regarding vulnerability and adaptation when it comes to water resources, and all the various sectoral use of water. Then the special role of the coordinating lead authors comes in the coordination part. The C is the coordination. Our job then becomes to bring together all the sections that have been written, make sure that they have been read through, they are telling a coherent narrative, etc. And in the process, we work very closely with the chapter scientist. So in the last report, in the current report that's undergoing the cities chapter, the IPCC also advertised for chapter scientist. In the AR6 cycle, the arrangements were a little different. Many of the CLAs got their chapter scientists to come and work with them. We work closely with the chapter scientists who help us with a lot of the things like the figures, the references, etc. So this was the second part. And the third experience, I think today we did not discuss it that much, was when all of these reports get written. And in this cycle, it would be the 2 methodology reports and the cities report and the 3 working group reports. At the end of the cycle comes the synthesis report. So I was also involved as one of the authors in the synthesis report in the last cycle. That job is a very challenging job of summarizing everything that's in the whole cycle. And in the last cycle, we had 3 special reports and 3 working group reports. So that was literally, I think, 20,000 pages, if I'm not mistaken, and to summarize them into 50 pages. Again, that had a structure, that has to have a coherent storyline, etc. So that in brief was a of my experience, and then I just wanted to share a few more, I think a couple of more minutes. In that, first of all, it is an absolutely amazing experience to work with scientists from around the world. In our team, for example, we have authors all the way from US to many countries in Europe, Africa, Asia, and then also Australia. So time zones were always a challenge, but we made it work. The others is just the reading and assessing as scientists, it just expands your entire breadth of knowledge. You may be all of us are experts in some areas, but when you are assessing, it's not about your own expertise only. It is also about reading up new issues and trying to summarize and synthesize and assess. So I think just the scientific rigor and the breadth of experience it gives you is absolutely phenomenal. Then the networks it creates amongst benefiting a lot, not only professionally but also in personal terms. Some very nice friendships develop over the process. On the some things that's important to remember when you nominate or reach out to your focal points or to observer organization. By the way, CGIAR is also an observer organization. We are very happy to also accept nominations from developing country partners, particularly if those are around agriculture and food systems and anything to do with rural areas. So also reach out to me or my colleagues about the nominations. Then I think the thing to remember is that it is a lot of work, and this is pro bono. You will not be paid for the time you are doing to do this work. So only nominate yourself if you are able to dedicate the amount of time it takes. It's quite a lot. It's not easy to describe it, unless you have gone through the process. Some organizations do support their authors, especially in the global north. University professors often can excuse themselves from teaching courses, etc. So there are those mechanisms available. It often becomes a bit more challenging for global south, where maybe teaching load, if you are a professor or an early career researcher, that is maybe quite high. So there are all those challenges. In my case, I was fortunate that my organization was able to provide a little bit of core time. I had around 20 days a year to dedicate to this, which was not enough, but it was still something. So remember the time commitment, it takes quite a lot. But it would be a life-changing experience if you are selected for the process. Again, the selection process is quite competitive. I don't think that kind of came out quite clearly. Literally thousands and thousands of applications will come in, and there are maybe slot for 200 authors per working group. So the competition is quite intense, and then the Bureau uses all the criteria that Anna and Patricia explained. So good luck. Please come forward, nominate yourself. If you're selected, it's going to be life-changing experience. And yeah, thank you for this opportunity again, Peter. Back to you.
Thank you, Aditi. Again, very informative, those personal reflections. And I think, well, with Anna and Patricia yourself, you've generated a lot of questions and answers, or questions that I see in the chat and the Q&A. So maybe this is the point to dive into some of them. But perhaps I saw a couple that were sort of aligned with your very last point about the competitive nature of this. And there were a couple of questions in the Q&A about how is the selection made? What about this balance between global north and global south countries? And are there disadvantages or advantages for global south applicants? And then again, the time scale, by when would applicants hear the results of the selection? I don't know who might wish to have a go at responding to that one. Anna, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just start off by noticing a question that was asking, more about the selection criteria, like which ones are the most important somehow. I would say the expertise base is really critical, and the way these outlines of the chapters have been scoped and agreed with the governments. So there are the outlines where you have not just the title, but also an indication of the content that's expected. So I would really check first this expectation for how the chapters will be developed, and really see how your expertise can be fitting in, because I think first and foremost, the Bureau members will have to make sure that they have all their bases covered. And then it's a question of covering the richness of the knowledge. So, your tools and your way in which you address the research questions is really important to put in your nomination. So through the publications that show the way you're tackling these topics, and also in your CV. So it's really good to highlight how your knowledge and the way you've been working to explain this in publications, in outreach documents, reports, and so on, to show the way, essentially demonstrate to the Bureau what you've been working on the topics that are specifically within the outlines of the chapters. I noticed that there were some questions about how to get in contact with the focal points and sending applications to the Secretariat. The Secretariat is not in the capacities to submit the nominations themselves. So if you are unable to contact the focal point, you may also look at the list of observer organizations. But I think it's helpful to ask the Secretariat for advice. And they have an email which we can put into the chat maybe in the course of the discussion. And the competitiveness factor is well, in the end, there's an increasing interest in participating in the IPCC process for all the reasons we've been describing. I think for the last nominations, there were about 1,000 or so candidates, for example, for the scoping of the working group reports, which is higher than in the 6th assessment report. So it's really good that there's a stronger wish to join this effort. And as far as I understand, it's a longer process for the Bureau to iteratively balance all the different criteria, the expertise, the gender, the geographical origin, the contextual dimensions, shall we say, of the knowledge that the participants will bring. And as far as I understand, the decisions will be made by July, so early July. So by this summer, you would find out if you are selected. So maybe I just stop there. There are lots of questions, so over to you.
Yes, there are a lot of questions, but one comes to my mind, of course. The advice you've just given was to go and look at the sort of synopsis for each chapter. So each chapter had different, covering different sections, and the advice to potential authors is to look at that and see where their expertise fits. Would you recommend they do that in parallel with contacting their national focal point, or they prepare everything in one go and submit it? Is there a sort of iterative process to say my application is coming? Are you ready to accept it, or is it a sort of one-off submission? Do you get my my question?
Yeah, maybe I could try answer that. I think it depends on different countries and how the process is done. Typically for us, we would encourage the expert to go through the outline and then identify what areas they would like or what chapters. And then once the nomination comes to us, then we would, if it fits the criteria, we would submit it as it is. Sometimes there may be clarifications that you require from an expert and we'd maybe reach out back, but the process is different with every country.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just trying to review, let's see some more of the questions coming through. So one from Akin Sikiru, can we make submission directly to the IPC Secretariat? I think the answer to that is no, but some queries about national focal points or others could be sent to the IPCC Secretariat. What criteria are mostly used to judge the quality of publications, whether they qualify to be included in the IPCC report? So maybe Aditi, you've been through this process, you must have been accepting or rejecting publications to refer to and include?
Yes. So, sorry, was the question about the CVs of the authors who are applying or the literature that we are assessing?
The quality of the publications that you are assessing. What quality criteria do you use?
Okay. So, that's a good question. And given that everybody on the team is an expert, we kind of develop, there is an intrinsic understanding. For one, those publications have to be about climate change. So that's, I think, the most basic one. So in the water, for example, there's a lot of work that happens in everything on water, on agricultural water management, on sanitation, on urban. But if those publications are not directly linked to climate change, then you do not assess them. The other is important part is the outline of the chapter. So in the AR7 cycle, in the Malaysia one, the one that Anna and Patricia were presenting the chapter outline, those were scoped during a meeting in Malaysia in December 2024. And so there have been like bullet points for each of the chapters. So that kind of lays out the scope of the chapter. So you also try to include articles that fall within the scope of what has been approved as the chapter outline. Then there are some obvious ones, like if the assessment is this is the seventh assessment, and we know that till the sixth assessment we have covered literature till say 2021 or 2022, depending on the cutoff period of the different working groups. So you usually start from after that with the reasoning that the literature before that has already been assessed in the previous cycle. So for example, in the AR6 cycle, for our chapter, we looked at preferred articles that were published after 2015, 2016, that is after the publication of AR5. And then there are issues around, if there's only a single model study versus a multi-model study, preference being given to the later. What will become very challenging in this cycle is just the sheer, even in the last cycle, we struggle with the sheer volume of articles. There is a lot of publications. So I think work around, we also then looked at more of systematic reviews, assessments and meta reviews. Those kind of papers got a bit more preference than say single studies, particularly if those single studies were like case studies or with a single kind of projection or model. So yeah, I hope it answers, but every team then develops its own inclusion exclusion criteria, not quite like a systematic review, but to make sure that the relevant literature is included. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aditi. I see another question from Anik Bossu. It says, Dear Anna, but I think you might have answered it already. How can we know we are selected and when? I think you said early July the announcement would be made and it would be presumably posted on the IPCC website.
Yes, I really recommend to follow the IPCC for announcements, so on social media in particular, and receive the latest information, like, for example, when the authors have been selected. It's very useful.
And I think also if we're creating a network within IAP of the people participating here, we can keep an eye out on those announcements as well and share them with you all as well. I think that's something we could probably manage. There was another one, I think, in the chat rather than the Q&A. Please put your questions in the Q&A. But from Manav Khanna, if we apply for lead author and are not selected for various reasons, can we be automatically considered for coordinator author, or do we need to submit a separate application for that role? Can you indeed submit more than one application?
I was thinking perhaps Mr. Khanna meant contributing author. Just
Okay.
if like the contributing authors are something that the chapters, so what the IPCC selects are the coordinating lead authors and the lead authors. And then I think, as both Anna and Patricia already mentioned, like, these are 12 people, and some of these areas are huge, and these 12 people always may not have every expertise that is needed to cover everything in that area. That's when these contributing authors come in. And if we know somebody who is an expert in a certain area, and we kind of, as the author team, basically the coordinating lead authors and the lead authors, they approach experts in that particular area, maybe a niche area within their larger topic, and request them to kind of follows a different process. But I'll stop there. I'll let maybe Anna and Patricia might have something to add. So I had a feeling that it could be about contributing author, but yeah.
Would you like to follow up, Anna? I see your hand with the role or the mechanism for the contributing authors.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aditi was very clear, and well, the mechanism, it would be through your peers who are the authors. They may reach out to representatives of a community and suggest that they could be the bridge to bring that specific expertise into the work of the chapter. So just to add that the contributing authors are acknowledged in the chapter outline, but they're not actually listed as an author, so it doesn't affect your citation list. That said, it's still a very valuable contribution to the process, and it's worthwhile, and it really complements and supports the work of the authors. So I think collectively, it's very nice to find every way possible to support this this Herculean effort. I just wanted to come back to your question about submitting more than one nomination. So if you want to be a lead author, you submit a nomination, or you want to be a coordinating lead author, I think it's really important before you submit your nomination to consider carefully your availability and the support you have also from your own institution, and propose. I would be ambitious and propose yourselves, if you have a desire to become a coordinating lead author. And then the Bureau will evaluate the roles as well as the nominated experts, and try to fit all these pieces of the puzzle together. So even if you are nominating as a CLA, coordinating lead author, in the end, the Bureau may propose that you contribute as a lead author. And here it's really just a question of building this team to the best way possible from the Bureau perspective. So I would really consider carefully how you are able to feed into this process. If you have more follow-up questions, discuss them with your national focal point if possible, or with other colleagues. And also, I would recommend contacting authors from your region, from the AR6. So really have this exchange with colleagues who have already been part of this process. And I think they would be more than happy, as Aditi has already said, to explain and support you, and help build that network within the network itself, shall we say.
Oh, I guess if you search IPCC authors AR6 somewhere on the internet, you would get a list of those authors quite easily available.
Yeah, I just jump back in. If you're thinking about joining the IPCC assessment, it's the first time. I mean, the first port of call will be the IPCC website. Have a look at the 6th assessment report products. You can go through the chapters, see what they consist of. In a way, this explanation we gave of considering the latest knowledge and then developing assessment statements, and you can see how this is being summarized in executive summaries. You really try and familiarize yourself with the reports. And there, obviously, you'll find the list of authors as well.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Ladislaus, you're still with us? I see a thought-provoking comment, at least in the Q&A. about diversity, equity, and inclusivity, which is something we've been talking about here and which the IPCC has been pushing for in recent years. But of course, there are certain countries that are pushing back on this idea right now, one of which is very important with in the global climate change debate. I wonder if the IPCC has had any thoughts, discussions, thinking of changing tack, or are you very much committed to this diversity and inclusion? Ladislaus, I see your black screen, but you don't seem to be appearing. Okay. Maybe, I don't know, Patricia, would you want to have a quick go at it? It was a comment rather than a question. So if you have any thoughts on it, what you've been hearing, maybe.
Yeah, and I think Aditi actually adequately addressed it, and I would share her views. It's just that we don't have specific targets or quotas, as may be insinuated here, which would then fix us or fix the IPCC to make sure that a certain number is filled. But what we're looking to do is make sure there is adequate representation across the regions and also with gender and many other diversity indicators. So definitely, the aim is not to reduce or compromise the scientific rigor, but to make sure that all regions are represented. And therefore, the experts who are selected from these particular regions where maybe the numbers have been low in the past, they would be the best candidates for that. So I don't think there's cause for alarm, really, with respect to us watering down the robustness or the rigor of the IPCC, and there are no particular targets or quotas. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe another question that's just occurred to me for both you, Patricia and Anna. You, as focal points, must receive a lot of applications. I presume there would be a sort of filtering and screening of those before you forward them to the IPCC, or could you give us an idea of the numbers you might receive or the percentage that are forwarded or rejected, or just a sort of the process of the focal points? Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I would say for the last reports, particularly the cities special report, we received around 60 or so candidates, and the vast majority are passed on to the Bureau. We have to be checking that they meet the criteria of the call so that the expertise is within the scope of the requested areas of expertise. I think that's the main issue to look at. And so we would like to support the Bureau in their work. But we run webinars like this to help explain the process and what's expected in Italy. And so essentially we receive carefully considered nominations in the first place. And then this moves on to the Bureau side, who evaluates the candidates.
Yeah, it would be the same for us as well. And so the advice we give is for the experts or potential experts to really critically look at the outlines. For the cities, we received 40, and most of them, like Anna, went in. So if you look at the outlines really well, then you can tailor your CV or determine which particular report to apply for. And that makes our work easier, but also makes the work of the Bureau easier in actually selecting the experts.
Great, thank you. And another question, we may have representatives of observers online, and IAP is also an observer of the IPCC. So I think the advice earlier was it's better to work through your national focal points, but if not, I think there was the question of Nigeria. There was no email available, so you could use an observer organization. If you find a suitable one of relevance to Nigeria in this case, or your particular area of work, that can be a good way to go. But in the case of IAP, do you have any advice for us on how we might operate should people wish to, they're having difficulty with their national focal point, if they wish to use IAP? how would you propose that we work? Maybe Aditi, you want to go first? I saw Anna's hand as well.
Right. Mine was not specific advice to IAP per se, but I wanted to say the CGIAR is a observer organization, and we are keen to nominate scientists from the global south, and a lot of our scientists we have around 6,000 scientists working in over 80 countries. So, and many of them work in issues of rural development, in the context of climate change, agriculture, food. And we have partners who are our national agricultural research organization. So we often nominate our own scientists and our partners, but we are also open to nominating others in the relevant field, given our own mandate. So if any one of the viewers here are in this particular field and want to be nominated, please do also reach out to us. But I think Anna might have a particular answer to your question, Peter. Back to you.
It's good to know that you're offering your services to those relevant scientists, authors out there as well. That's great. Thank you. But Anna?
Yeah, I would really emphasize, I mean, I think from a national focal point perspective, really strengthening the national processes and the way we interface as a country. It's a benefit, really strong benefit also to policymakers in your country, the scientific community in your country. And so I urge you to reach out to your national focal points. And if you do not find their emails, you can contact the Secretariat, and they will give you the latest information. Should you not be able to contact the focal point after all, I guess time is running quite short. So really it's in the next few days to try and establish this contact. Then of course, I think observer organizations are really critical in supporting the process. And they're also really critical in reaching a broader network of scientists and experts. That said, I mean, for the Inter-Academy partnership, I think it's also important for each observer organization to consider the areas where they're strategically most active and trying to strengthen the science policy interface. I know the IAP has initiated many activities exactly on doing this on topics like health, geoengineering, and other topics that are relevant for the IPCC assessment reports. So you may want to encourage those scientists that you've been working to really strengthen that science policy interface in your own work and bring them into the assessment themselves.
Okay, thank you. That's sage advice for IAP as well. You pointed out our work on climate change and health, for example, and we can take that into consideration. We have still 10 minutes to go. There was a question about the outlines for the different chapters, and I see now there is a PDF link in the chat that everybody can access. And I think there was also what about the deadline for Nigeria applicants? If the focal point is not reachable, I think go through the IPCC Secretariat. If you scroll up in the chat, you'll find the email. And we'll try and post that also on a quick summary of this event on the IAP website. You should be able to find it there as well. Okay, the Secretariat email is reposted, so you don't have to go scrolling so far. Let me just check. Nothing new in the Q&A. A question from Mohammed Hassan. Can you update us on collaboration with IPBES and UN Food Systems Conference Hub? Mohammed, if you're online, I don't know if you want to share your screen. I don't know, Sophia, if we can allow Mohammed to speak and sort of explain a little more on this. The IPBES is the Intergovernmental Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services and runs in a similar way. It's modeled on the IPCC producing these mega reports, in this case on biodiversity ecosystem services. And I know it's in its own cycle, asking for its own authors on various different aspects. Again, IAP from our side, we are advertising these calls when we receive them through our website, our social media. And we are, I think, an observer. We get invited to send people to their meetings, the headquarters in Bonn, but we don't have a regular formal engagement as such. And are you there,
Peter?
Mohammed? Yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, this is really a general question. I just want to know whether a sufficient number of authors do have expertise on issues that relate to IPBS and food systems, because these two are extremely important for climate change, as you know very well. So I'm just trying to see whether there is any sort of collaboration that facilitates this. Thank you.
Okay, so you mean between IPBS and the authors they have feeding into the IPCC reports?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring in Ladislaus for this one. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, and I appreciate for the question. So in the 7th assessment cycle, we committed ourselves for strengthening inclusivity and also strengthening collaborative effort. And the collaboration with IPBS is, sorry, I think there's some interference. I can, hello? Can
Okay, go
you
ahead. I think he's muted now.
Yeah, so what I said is that in this cycle, we committed ourselves for strengthening inclusivity and also strengthening collaborative efforts. And the IPCC chair have designated one of the IPCC vice chair to be a liaison person between IPCC and the IPP base. And therefore, there is this kind of strong partnership. And I wish my colleague could have been here, could have explained a lot of ongoing effort in that collaboration. So there are good collaboration ongoing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ladislaus. And it's good to hear that coordination and collaboration. I think that probably answers Mohammed's question. I see something from Angela Akanwa in the chat. My areas of research cover climate change impacts on agriculture, health, socio-economic, and gender. I think the recommendation would be to look at the PDF that was posted a little higher up on the different sort of working group outlines and really target in and identify the key area, the key chapter and section that you would be able to contribute to. Feel free, Anna, Patricia, or Aditi, to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Anna, you raised a hand again.
Yeah, just to say, see this, the diversity of the combination, shall we say, of the topics and working in the nexus of these issues that are all central to the IPCC reports, particularly Working Group 2, is really interesting, I think, for in terms of being selected as an author, because building these linkages between the sectors is very, very useful, I think, from a policymaker perspective. So I just wanted to comment on that. I think when you can demonstrate the capacity to handshake between different sectors and build information that is integrating across different disciplines, this is very, very welcome, I would say, in the IPCC reports. But maybe Aditi and Patricia would complement or add to this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Anna. Actually, it's like in the role as, because we are assessing literature, having these kind of understanding of the intersection between various fields is super important. I believe that the Bureau would also be looking for researchers who work at the intersection of these various subtopics rather than maybe very deep expertise in a smaller area. That's what I think maybe one of the selection ways of looking at somebody who would be able to contribute broadly to an intersection of topics. But there was a question around a meeting later on, Patrick. I don't know if Pete, sorry.
There was something from
Yeah.
Graziella
Sorry, Peter.
Lucia about
Yeah.
the in-person meetings. Could you explain again how these meetings will work? Specifically, how can somebody based abroad, wherever that is, effectively collaborate or with or support a Global South focal point? I think this should be the last. I see we've probably lost Patricia. I know she was having battery charge problems on her laptop. Maybe they will take this last question and I see Ladislaus his hand up. Do you want to take that one, Ladislaus?
No, there was a question and a request from the Q&A about the update of the list and contact for IPCC Focal Point. So what I noted that we'll work with the Secretariat to do as much as possible on that line to update the list as appropriate and also the contact address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So anything I think, Anna, in your presentation, you noted that some support from the IPCC Secretariat could be given for travel to those from the Global South to attend the in-person author meetings.
Yes, yes, of course. So integral to this assessment process with the reviews, and there's a sort of standard set of milestones, and one of them is consisting of 4 lead author meetings. So the process is designed to work with the network, shall we say, offline or on telecons most of the time, but then bring together the authors in person at critical points of the assessment timeline. And these meetings typically last a week, and they're hosted by countries around the world. The IPCC Trust Fund is available to cover the travel expenses of participants from developing countries, so the authors from developing countries. I would just emphasize the necessity to prioritize participation in these meetings. I think shall we say, if competing priorities come into play and you miss such a meeting, it's really a drawback to be able to really interface with the work of the IPCC, of your chapter team, and that also discussing with the other chapters the coherent narrative of the report itself. So yes, there are these in-person meetings, and they're exciting events and critically important as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And it was a sort of optimistic note. I think we should probably finish on here. Our time is up. I think we've had a good presentations. I thank you to all our speakers, Ladislaus, Anna, Patricia, and Aditi. I think you've made the process much clearer for me, and I had some ideas of it, but it is much clearer now. So I hope our participants, at a certain point that I noted more than 100, so it's a good turnout. We will make the recording of this available on our website as soon as we possibly can within the next few days. But I hope even today we'll put some of those key links, key email addresses and things, so everybody can have access to them. We'll circulate, if you haven't downloaded it already, the infographic that we've produced, so you'll have access to that. That has live links in it too. I just thank you all for your engagement, your participation, your questions, your comments. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we see this as the first in a series of webinars following this IPCC process. So we hope to see you all again in about 2 months' time. And we'll see where we're at in the process and what the engagement has been like. So thank you again for all your participation. And we look forward to continuing our engagement. Thank you.